My name is Chris Jennings with GlassCity Amplifiers, and I'm meeting here with Terry Adams today. And Terry is, his son is married to my daughter. Terry saw what was going on with the GlassCity Amplifiers and the Tube Rolling Preamplifier, and very interested in that. So he drove up here. We're going to take a look at it, probably do a demo, folks. But Terry, do you want to just give us a little background on, how you started in music, how long you've been working with tube equipment?
Well, tube amp since I was in high school. We're talking the 70s, so it's a long time ago.
What was your first tube amp? Do you remember? Buy it used or buy it new?
It was used, and I want to say it was a Fender Champ.
Who'd you get it from? Do you remember?
A friend in high school.
Somebody you knew
Yeah.
had one and you bought it off him?
Yes, and I still have my first guitar that I bought when I was in high school. It's actually at the house.
Did you buy it as a set or you got them separately?
I got them separately,
Right.
but I wish I still had that amp.
Yeah, I bet. I mean, what drew you to it? I mean,
Kid in the 70s, the shirt speaks for itself.
Right.
It's what you
you
did,
needed
right?
something that you could turn up loud. And,
Yeah, it's loud, it's rebellious, whatever. And at that time, it was about volume.
girls. It was about girls.
Volume and girls, yeah. Anything that would
Trying to
upset
impress
mom and
girls.
dad and make the girls think you were cool. That was
Right.
that was the initial thing. But after that, and once you got into it, you started to grow with the equipment, and of course the music as you're doing it. It's like, hey, this is pretty cool. This is actually pretty cool. This has good sound, has good tone to it, and then of course the music evolves with it at the same time.
You've been, how long have you been recording, and what kind of recording have you done? It sounded like you're currently working with the studio down there. Is it Cincinnati or Columbus?
It's actually in Grove City. So,
okay. And yep.
I've done recording at the recording workshop in Chillicothe through late 80s, early 90s. Through that's a school that teaches engineering, and so I would go down there, and the project I was in would go down there pretty regular to record in multiple studios with multiple setups, and did that for a long time. And then back in Columbus and other projects, so there's the recording workshop, Music Hall Recording Studios, which is in the north end of Columbus, Amerisound, which was in Grandview. These are nice studios. These are nice, complete studios. Currently, John Schwab Studios from McGuffey Lane, his studios. Very nice, well-equipped studios, real nice places. And right now, working with Joe Veers at the Sonic Lounge. I've been doing that with a guy I went to school with for a couple years now. We're over a couple years into this. Going down to Joe's and recording regularly in what is a really state-of-the-art, really nice studio.
So who's all in the studio when you're recording? I mean, how many people are there? Is there a sound engineer and the musicians, and what's that look like typically?
Typically, it's not what most people think, where it's a big band comes in and sets up and
Right.
plays live, and engineers
You
saying,
may do one track
hey,
at a
that's
time.
great, but more cowbell.
Right,
Yeah.
more cowbell.
Yeah.
I mean,
It's not that at
Yeah,
all.
okay.
It's honestly, it's not that at all. So the sessions I do with most of these guys, if it's first tracking, it's usually going to be bass and drums, and I will go down to play scratch tracks. We're called scratch guitar tracks. The guy that has the project, he's going to be there just to simply guide and instruct what he wants, and then after those tracks are done, they're gone.
Right.
And then when it's time to do the vocal track, the singer may go by himself with, again, the guy that's producing this project, or that's doing this project. He'll go just to give direction on what he wants. And then when it's time for guitar, I'll go down and it'll be me, that guy, and the engineer.
So financially, that makes a lot of sense, right? I mean, you don't want a bunch of people sitting around doing nothing while getting paid while you're doing this and
Correct.
we're doing that. So
Correct.
they focus on, we're going to have these two people or these person or whoever that is come in, and we're going to do this one thing. We're going to capture it, and then we'll layer all this in.
That's right.
And build it out.
That's right. Once the rhythm,
Someone's got that vision, right?
Right. Once the rhythm tracks are done and down, the rest of it's one at a time.
Okay.
Give me this guitar, now solo guitar, now vocals, now backing vocals. The one he did last week, which is pretty cool, it was a violinist.
Oh, really? That's
kind of, yeah, very cool.
Right. So you go in, you're gonna try this setup, and you're playing along. Is it? You've got to wait for the tubes to get hot. Then you've got to start playing. and you do a couple versions and decide that something's not right. I'm going to have to shut down. We're going to...
I can usually know a few bars in.
Right, so you get into it.
Some people might go 2 or 3 takes
Mm-hmm.
and say that something's not right. And it's not that I'm over the top, but I can just tell pretty quickly.
This isn't it.
Yeah, it's like, no, this isn't it.
But you let them warm up for like 20 minutes, you said? Or?
Yeah, they really need to heat up. As you know, tubes
Yeah.
require time to be optimized in what they're going to produce. So they have to be hot. You can't just go and turn the amp on, hit your power button, and start playing.
Because the sound will change as it warms up.
It changes as it's playing,
You
right?
might get it as hot as, where it's operating optimally, and then it's just going to continue to sound the same.
Correct.
And that's the sound you're
Correct.
looking for.
Once they've burnt in and they're at the optimum burning level that they're supposed to be at, then your sound's good. But if you're trying to play, before that, and that's what really made a lot of people go to solid state, because a lot of people don't understand it. With tube amps, there's a standby switch. And there's a reason for that standby switch. So that you don't just turn the amp on and start trying to play, because it increasingly gets louder because they're just heating up.
Oh, yeah. No,
That's
I know.
the first problem.
Yeah.
And then, of course, the longer you play, the more it changes.
You've got 20 minutes to let it warm up. You play for 3 or 4 minutes, 5 minutes, and decide this is not right. Then you turn it off and let it cool for maybe another 5 minutes before you want to swap it out, right? So we're looking at 30 minutes. Now, if you four different tubes, that's 2 hours of studio time.
Got to start changing tubes. Preamp tubes, now not power amp
Right.
tubes, because obviously, as you know, start just randomly changing power amp tubes in an amp that needs to be biased, you're going to blow a transformer. But preamp tubes, those are different. You can change those.
And they're going to change the character of
Absolutely. So it just depends. And then it's just a matter of finding that right tube and the right chain or link or whatever it is that's it. But as we talked about before, to do that, you have to power up. You just have to heat up and get hot. Got to wait for that. Then you got to try it. If it's not there, then you got to power down. And before you can start grabbing tubes that you could burn eggs on instantly, you've got to let them cool off before you can take it out.
Yeah, you damage them.
Yeah, you can damage them.
They're expensive. Some of them are hundreds of dollars.
Yeah, they can be expensive.
Yeah, very expensive.
You do that, and then you try it again. And I've read interviews with guys in the 70s, 80s, and 90s that spent a week in the studio, trying to find the right sound.
That's a lot of money, right?
It's costing somebody, because the studio certainly, an engineer isn't going in there for recreation, because like everybody else.
I'm not here because,
Right, he's got a mortgage or rent to pay, and he's got to eat too. So, somebody's paying it. But it's like, for the artist, we're going to be as long as we need to be to get the sound I want.
So you saw my demo and bang, because I'm, the audiophile and the home stereo, and I thought of the guitar applications, but it's like, okay, that's something to think about, but I want to focus on this. And I think you got pretty excited just looking at it and saying, wow, now this applies,
Well, with your demo that I saw, I heard on my phone, no less, which phone's terrible to listen to anything
I
on.
recorded it with my phone, so,
Right, so it's a terrible thing to listen to anything on. And when I heard the change, I was like, oh, wow. The first thing that hit me is like, wow, if this could work in tandem with the tube amp for the artist and possibly for the studios, recording studios, to have on-the-fly rolling with multiple options as far as preamp tubing, ooh, man, that would be really kind of cool. Really kind of a cool thing.
Yeah.
So that immediately drew my interest right there in and of itself.
In the aspect of recording and the time it takes in the studio and the expense, that really made me think, well gosh, that sounds like a problem that we might have a solution to apply to that, and that's something we can illustrate pretty easily, right? That if we can cut down the amount of time it takes to get there, that's over a couple sessions, you've got your money back.
It could be one session.
Right.
I mean, it could just be a setup, as I alluded to. There have been artists that have been in a studio for a week, spending 10, 12 hours in the studio just trying to get a sound, turning knobs, changing tubes. They spent a bunch of time trying to find something that ended up being a little amp that if it was in the right configuration, you could eliminate that week of experiment, right?
Just switch back and forth.
Yeah, yeah.
That's what we got.
Just
So
try the different tubes and then try to roll them differently. Okay, and you could be done in an hour, maybe. Or
you
even
can
sooner.
eliminate things pretty quick.
Well,
Look
and,
elsewhere.
and you still keep that organic tube sound. You know, you're really expediting the process of finding the sound.
Yep.
Absolutely.
Let's go. We'll take a look at the demo, and then and we'll wrap it up kind of afterwards. But I appreciate you guys coming all the way up here. You know,
No
and
problems.
I'm looking forward to coming down and visiting with. It's Joe, right? Is the
Joe,
guy that owns
yeah.
yeah. So that's pretty cool. So I'm excited about that. Listening to the eMac, which has GarageBand on it, and that GarageBand is playing into the preamp, and the preamp is playing into the amp.
Right.
Okay, so that's the setup we've got here. So I've got let's see what I got here. I got a cheap 12AU7 from China that came with a headphone amp.
Right.
I've got a newer a JJ
Okay, JJs
typical
are good.
typical guitar. And the last one is it is a tongue saw vintage 60s 50s
I like
vintage.
tongue saws too.
Okay.
Okay,
So
so-
it's built in. So let's demo. Let's demo.
Yeah,
this
let's
thing.
do this.
Let's demo this.
Then
thing.
I'll ask you some questions after that.
So, all right, I think we're good to go. Let's see if we're getting any sound out of this thing here. Let me go all the way back to the beginning.
Yep.
And all right, so let's get rid of the organ and the bass.
I
You
heard
hear the
that
difference?
I heard it immediately.
You hear the difference?
I heard it immediately. Heard it immediately. Absolutely. I hear that.
So let's talk a little bit about the different characteristics, right? So if you could describe this tube we're listening to now, just
So that one has more cut and obviously more output because it got a little louder. But it also had more cut. So it's like the middle one, assuming,
the middle one.
right, has more of the scooping and it is more of a mountain reverse scoop. Or it cuts better. You can hear a little bit more definition out of the right tube than you could say the far left tube. And the one in the middle is more scooped and more lower output. But that's exactly the idea. You know, if I'm running an amp either, that's exactly
That's
what I'm
what you
talking
want it to
about. Exactly what I'm talking about. And that works obviously in tandem with solid state because you're coming from a computer which is solid state and you can still hear the difference.
Yeah.
So it's pliable in solid state circuitry and tube circuitry.
It's exciting, right?
It's the total package. It's the total package. You can use it in all applications.
I mean, it's
Stereos.
compelling, right? I mean, it's
Absolutely.
very compelling.
I'm enthralled by it.
You want to have something that has the full gambit.
It covers the
Like,
whole.
this is my collection of tubes that I use for different purposes.
Right.
And I want them all laid out, and I want to be
Exactly.
able to switch to them because now we're going to change direction, or just because I'm not getting the sound that I want.
Exactly.
I'll start with the Chinese one. It's got
High end off. Go back to that tungsten.
hear that? It's just
Yeah.
opened up. It got deeper, right?
One that's got better cut. I can hear those high end strings better.
It's cleaner.
I can hear that a lot better with that tungsten. It's like, I want in, Chris. I want in. It's seriously. I hear the difference. Sitting here through this little
You
practice.
can
amp.
totally hear the difference.
I can totally hear a difference of a computer going through that into a practice amp. I can hear the difference. So, take that
Extrapolate.
aspect
Yeah.
and put it at the high level. If you can notice it to hear, it will be considerable on a higher level.
Absolutely.